We're going to start with the calling the meeting to order, 5:31. Consent of previous minutes. I'd entertain a motion for the previous minutes unless you have some questions or comments.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, Kevin has made the motion. Any conversation? Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm going to call the vote. Rick?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
And Amy, if you can. If not, keep driving. Okay, next. We have policy reading first, or policy first reading. Why don't we take these all together? Do you have any questions, comments, or need an overview regarding any of the policies that are before us? No? And the ones before us, just to be clear, are the district equity policy, the staff evaluation, student attendance procedure, parent involvement, use of school facilities, and application and agreement for use of school facilities. And those were attached. So if there isn't any discussion, I would accept a motion to approve just the first reading. These will come back to us.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Rick has made the motion. I'm going to take the vote. Rick?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
And I will vote as an aye. So moved. Next on the agenda is the second reading for some policies that are coming back to us. And that is, I'll get there. That is the inter-district school choice procedure and application. Electronic communications between employees and students. Any feedback or conversation around that? If there is none, I'd entertain a motion to approve that second reading.
I feel like there was something we wanted to discuss on the inter or cross district on the second reading, and I don't remember what it is from the last meeting, but I'm just remembering that and didn't know if anybody else thought of it.
Let me look back and see. I know I'm getting confused with whether there was the inter and then there was the cross, like across districts, and this would be the inter district, and I can't remember which one. Oh.
Kevin, are you remembering any?
I don't.
No, I'm not. I just vaguely remember that we said we were going to see it again next month and discuss it maybe, but I don't. It couldn't have been that important if I'm not remembering it.
Well, and now, oh wait, let me see. District, I'm looking at the wrong document.
So this is not one you got in your board packet because it's a second read. So it would have been, I do remember that you pointed out some places where we had missed changing the name. So this is the policy that we brought forward that is the cross district one. So Doreen, I believe, went back through and checked all of the names and corrected those so that there's consistency throughout.
So that is
So
in
this
our
is the
packet.
cross district?
Cross district.
All right, maybe I didn't go far enough down.
Yes, cross district, correct. Okay. Yeah, it looks like the only changes was that change in the cross district.
Change the name of it from inter-district to cross-district.
Correct. Okay.
And I think she's highlighted where you pointed out there wasn't consistency in the names. And she fixed that. But if there was
Right.
something else, I'm not remembering what it was.
Same.
Yeah, I don't remember it. Obviously, it wasn't that big a deal if it was something on this. So I will make a motion to approve then.
Okay, so Kevin has a motion to approve. I'm going to take a vote unless there's any other discussion. So Rick,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
and I will make a vote of aye as well. So moved. Next we have reports. I don't think there were any, correct? Nope. Okay. Am I mistaken?
No.
Okay. So next is the recognition of visitors. And so I am seeing some folks in the meeting. I didn't know, are they visitors or are they a part of the agenda?
So we have at least a few who are part of the agenda. I know that Joe Lagis and Alyssa Wieland are doing a presentation. Nate, is Sarah Jo helping with the presentation for you? Gab is joined as a principal of the Virtual Academy. So I think you've got Maggie and Lisa.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Maggie is a student at UVEI. She's in the Principal's Internship Program, and part of her course requirement for licensure is to attend a board meeting. And so she's here with us tonight to see how we process.
Awesome. We'll have to be on our best behavior then.
I was going to
Added
say,
bonus is I get to see
lucky
Margaret present budget.
individual. Oh, that's riveting. Get ready. Okay. And hi, Lisa.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm just here to listen.
Okay, great. So that brings us to I'm sorry, I missed the preview and prioritization. Do we need to adjust?
So Jen Hubbard's dealing with an emergency at her school, and I know she has 2 teachers presenting tonight.
Okay.
If we could ask Nate to go first, and then let's just take them out of order, and maybe Jen will be able to be with us by then.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, Alyssa. Hi, Joe. Okay, so let's start with Nate.
Okay, I don't know who has the ability to control the screen function or sharing of the screen.
That would be Morgan, I believe.
So Morgan, if you could allow, perfect. So if you could allow that function to happen, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Jo. She was instrumental in creating a part of our website that that we use school-wide. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and all the credit goes to her on this this website that we use with all of our students for employability skills. So I don't see where SJ is, but I'm going to turn it over to her. If not, I can pull it off. But is she still there?
She's there.
I'm here, Nate. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to put a spotlight on Cold Hollow Career Center. I'm just going to test my screen share here. A few minutes ago, it did not work, but it looks like it's going to allow me to now. For those of you who may not know me well, I am a graduate of Cold Hollow Career Center from way back in the day. And the trajectory of my professional life was immensely shaped by my experience at Cold Hollow as a student. And one of my great passions in life is career development, and particularly working with students who have one foot still in childhood and one foot nearing adulthood and navigating all of those really uncomfortable unknowns about what comes next in terms of career steps. And so it's been such an honor to be part of the team and part of the process in putting together a tool that we believe will continue to provide a tremendous amount of value to all of our students who attend Cold Hollow. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to head on over to our Cold Hollow website. And if someone can give me a heads up that you can see this, or a thumbs up and see my screen.
Yep.
Perfect. So this is our website. If you have not seen it before, I encourage you on your own time to come check it out at chccbt.net. It is, as probably all of our websites are, a continuous work in progress and a test and continuous improvement. We do have a blog that we've been trying to do a better job of keeping updated, so you will find that there as well. Another thing that I want to point out before we jump over to our employability website is the rich level of information that's available about our programs. And for those of you who interact with students or other staff members who have access to students that might one day consider Cold Hollow Career Center, or maybe you have children of your own, under the Our Programs tab, you can click and get information about all 7 of our programs. And one thing we've been focusing on this year is trying to make the information a little bit more interactive. So I've got Baxter Weed's Automotive Technology program up right now, and you'll notice across the top we've got a banner that has lots of videos. So on each one of our program pages, starting this fall, we have a video introduction from the instructor. And now we are also starting to actively collect testimonials from our graduates. And so you'll see on Baxter's page, we've got 2 graduates that have given just amazing, amazing testimonials about how their experience at Cold Hollow impacted their career, and giving folks a little bit of an update about where they're at now. So we're continuing to reach out to our graduates to ask for these. And as the weeks go on, you're going to find more and more of those videos that we're sharing on Facebook, that we're featuring on our blog, and that will become a permanent part of our website. And then of course, you'll find a variety of information about each one of our programs. The reason why I'm here today, this evening, is really to show you another website that's embedded here that we're really excited about. I'm going to just jump back to the homepage. There's a variety of ways that you can find it. The easiest one is just by heading onto the homepage and clicking on this "Are You Employable?" button. And as this is loading, just a little bit of a background. All of our programs at Cold Hollow Career Center focus on 8 employability skill areas that are common because they are transferable skills. So our high school principals, a lot of this language will sound familiar because they align really nicely with the transferable skills that we have been exploring and adopting as graduation requirements. These skills we have been working to develop over many years with support from our local employers and our advisory boards. So we know that these are the skills that our employers are demanding across all industries as folks are entering the workforce. And of course, we also know that these skills are transferable to all aspects of life. So they are not limited to work or to careers. So this site is also a work in progress. It's under development. I started working on it this summer as a result of a course that I took in career development as I'm working on a credential, and I thought, what better opportunity to tackle building out a resource that could really not only be beneficial during the restrictions that we face with COVID-19 and not knowing about ongoing remote learning, but something that could be helpful moving forward. So what you're going to see here on this landing page are all 8 of our employability skill areas. And over the years, our staff, again, has worked closely with employers and advisory members to really fine-tune the content of these 8 skill areas. And I'm going to click on dependability because another thing that we've started doing this fall at Cold Hollow is to focus on one employability skill area per month for the whole center. And that is really gaining traction. In the month of October, we focused on dependability and had some building-wide challenges and some program contests to just help folks kind of get their bearings around what dependability is, what it means, and gain some understanding as they will begin over time to apply those skills in and outside of their programs. So what you'll find, and I hope at some point you all will take the time to explore this site on your own. I know there's a lot going on right now. But each of the landing pages are built out exactly the same. So we're going to look at dependability, but communication, problem solving, leadership, all of the pages use the same format. So what we find on the landing page is the employability skill heading, in this case, dependability, and we have the overall goal. So students understand what the overarching goal is. We are working toward being able to demonstrate reliability and commitment in this case. In each of our employability skill areas, we have focused on 3 simple performance indicators. So over time, we've really tried to narrow down the content so that it is easy to understand. It's the simple, most essential skills that the students need in these areas as they're starting out. So we have the 3 performance indicators in bold. So in this case, dependability means that you can show up, be on time, and be prepared. And we really push that over and over and over again at Cold Hollow as the most entry-level employability skill. You know, our employers tell us we are willing to train technical skills. We are willing to work with employees if they will show up, you know, show up consistently, be on time, and just, you know, have an attitude of preparedness. So we have a statement about what it means to be dependable in this way, along with a couple of external resources. And then we have our second indicator, in this case, follow instructions and meet expectations. Again, a description of what that looks like. And we found that these descriptions are a little bit more accessible for students and a great entry point to conversations rather than formerly we've used all different kinds of rubrics and things that feel very much like school. But this language is really just accessible and a little bit more aligned with what they would hear and see in the workplace. And then we have our final performance indicator, do and be your best, and again with some resources. So the landing page for each skill is designed to give students or whoever is accessing the resource the overarching goal, the 3 performance indicators with an easily accessible description of what it looks like, and a few little resources to check out as a launching place. This is very much in alignment, although the format looks different, with what we have been doing right along at Cold Hollow, at least for the 7+ years that I've been back in the building. What we have changed and implemented with this new site is this next level work. So on all of the pages, you'll see this button, I want to build my knowledge. There's also a button that says I'm working for my employability card. Both of these buttons behind the scenes take you to the same place, but might be used for different purposes. So in a classroom setting, a teacher might, for example, assign on a remote learning day, on a Wednesday, for example, we have teachers who will ask their students to do 1 knowledge builder or 2 knowledge builders on their remote learning day. And so a student could access that by clicking on this button. And now we've got 7 to 8 resources for each skill. And I want to reiterate that these are external resources. So these are resources that have been curated that already exist out in the great wide world. Unless otherwise indicated, these are not resources that have been developed at Cold Hollow. We're not trying to recreate the wheel, just give students an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what this skill is all about. So these resources might be connected to TED Talks or to other online videos, to podcasts, to articles, or a variety of resources that exist on the web that will cover the basic knowledge connected to the skill. And what we have provided for students is a checklist. So if they click on this button down here, they will get a document that automatically copies to their Google Drive. And it will give them a box for each one of the resources in a Google Doc where they can type in the most important points and their most important takeaways after reviewing each resource. My students are telling me that just that one thing alone, having that document that they have access to on their Google Drive that they can refer back to, that gives them, oh yeah, this was like that thing that I read about showing up on time, or this was that little resource about personal hygiene, or the 10 tips for meeting a deadline, that resource alone has made an impact on them. After students would have completed the knowledge builders, they can go to this button down at the bottom that says, I'm ready to test my understanding. And this is going to take them again to the next level. So educators, you'll recognize that we are doing like a KUD kind of format here. We're focusing on making sure that our students have some background knowledge about each one of these skills. Now we're going to give them an opportunity to test their understanding of how those skills might apply out in their life and in the world. So this is just a short little Google form. It's connected to the resources, and some of them are just like, you know, they're really easy, just giving them a chance to make sure that they understand the language and the vocabulary. But then we've also built in some scenarios where they have to think about, okay, if this was going on in a workplace, and, you know, this particular scenario is about two people who kind of have very different work ethics. And if the employer had to make a choice about who to leave in charge based on dependability, who would they choose? So they're having to really take their knowledge and apply their understanding of that knowledge. They're just like 10 questions, and we're asking them to, you know, if they can get an 8 out of 10, that they're ready to move forward. And we're giving them, you know, if they prefer to talk this out with an instructor or whatever, they're not limited to only testing using this particular little quiz. Once they have demonstrated, either through a conversation with the instructor or through this Check for Understanding quiz, they would move on to, I'm ready to demonstrate my skills. And this is also a place where we've spent a lot of time over the past number of years attempting to bring students along to this, you know, having a body of evidence to demonstrate skills. And what we're identifying is if we can't be certain that they really have the knowledge and the understanding, asking them then to be able to demonstrate skill, there sometimes is a gap, not because they don't have the skill, but they may not have the knowledge and understanding to be able to recognize the skill in a way that allows them to pull the evidence together. So this walks them through the variety of ways that they may be able to demonstrate. We're asking them to pull together a body of evidence and to do some reflection, giving them lots of opportunity to do that in ways that meet their particular style and their needs. So whether that's written or video or audio, a portfolio entry, or some other way to be able to reflect on where they were at before they had the skill, where they're at now, what they learned along the way, and to provide some artifacts that would back that up, plus verification from an adult that they're not related to, who can verify that yes, in fact, this student does have the skill. The whole goal of this, of course, is to get students ready for the world of work. And we are excited this year to be testing out our CHCC Employability Card. So the goal is that we will have some students, hopefully by the end of this year, who have presented a body of evidence in each of the 6 core skill areas. And those students would be able to earn a physical employability card with our logo and a little blurb on the back that would let an employer or a college counselor or some other person know that yes, this student has these skills and they have been verified. And we're excited about in the future building capacity with our employers, that card over time would really carry weight and value in our greater community. So this is all working towards something I think, and I think Nate would agree with this and our staff would agree with this, provides so much additional credibility for our students. We know that our students leave Cold Hollow prepared and employable and ready for their next steps. This is just one step that allows us and allows them to be able to prove it and to have that extra credibility as they go on to their next steps. So that's a lot of me talking. I thank you so much for the opportunity, and I hope, again, on your own time that you will come and check out the website. I always more than welcome feedback. If you notice any gaps, or if anyone out there has great resources that we might be able to include, we would certainly appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions before? I know you have a huge agenda, but if you have pressing questions, would attempt to answer them.
I just have a question. One is this linked to the Enosburg and Richford websites, or is it sit by itself?
Right now, it is only linked to our Cold Hollow Career Center website.
Right, okay.
It doesn't mean that it couldn't be linked other places, but right now you get to it through Cold Hollow Career Center.
Okay, and then secondly, just to clarify, are all programs using the same format? Like, are they all using the same website for the little tasks that are aligned? You're all uniformly doing that?
So that is the goal. We are just rolling it out. So some programs have jumped in a little bit more rapidly than others. So we see it as being, having that it will roll out over time. But yes, this site that I just took you through is the site that all programs are using. The other thing, and I'll just quickly go back to the screen share to point this out. The other thing that we have that has not been built out yet, but we do have capacity for on the site, is for program specific resources. So on the homepage, idea is, for example, I have resources around employability skills. I'm just starting to use Conover, which is an online industry recognized platform for developing workplace readiness skills. The idea would be over time that those individual program resources connected to employability would be available to students here as well. Our programs certainly explore employability skills in industry specific ways inside the program. The idea with this site is that we are building the same consistent language and understanding around what the skills are and what they mean. And then inside the program, students would be able to further explore and apply in ways that are industry specific.
Great, that was awesome. I love the card idea, the employability card. That's a great idea.
Yeah, we've had a lot of work around that idea. Probably what, Nate, for 4 or 5 years we've been playing with this idea of an employability card, and we really just haven't had the systems and structures to back it up as being something that has meaning. So we're hoping that the site and the work that we're doing will really make a card mean something.
Are there any other questions before we move into the other showcase?
I just want to
Or
thank you, Joe, for presenting tonight. It was fantastic. I loved seeing all of that.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Jen and Joe and Alyssa, you're up.
Well, Joe and Alyssa have done a great project with the kids, and I'm going to let them explain about it, but it even was in the paper, and it was a great way to get some engaging activities in with the kids with a remote learner. So it turned out really well. Joe?
I yield my time to Alyssa.
Oh, okay.
Just kidding. We're going to do this together, but maybe you could start, Alyssa, because you did the grant.
Sure. While I start talking, do you want to share your screen with the little slideshow we put together? Okay. So hello, I'm Alyssa Whelan. I teach 5th grade at Inusburg Elementary School. And this fall, Joe and I were talking, we really wanted to start off the year strong with our students. You know, when we left in the spring, both of us were doing Genius Hour projects, and so a lot of kids' projects kind of left at school and weren't returned to. And so we really wanted with a project that the students would have time to complete before anything happened. We didn't know what the fall would look like. So we applied for a grant through Vermont Arts Council. And Joe, do you want to hit present on the slideshow? Okay. And then go to the next slide. Please, thank you. Okay. So we just put together this really quick slideshow to kind of walk you through what we did and what the kids did and how they felt about it. And we have some finished products at the end. So Sarah Frechette is our resident artist. She's a professional puppeteer, and we all worked on applying for this grant together. We ended up getting a grant for $2,750, which was used to get supplies for all 26 students in the 5th grade, as well as 22 hours with Sarah Frechette. And it was really incredible because it all had to be done virtually because Sarah Frechette was not able to come into the classroom. So we went over a lot of hurdles, but this project ended up being amazing. And I did just want to give a quick shout out to Troy Hickman. He's at the Vermont Arts Council, and he went above and beyond to help us and answer any questions that we had. And he was really there throughout the process for us. So the project, Sarah Frechette video chatted in with all the 5th graders. We were able to have a group lesson, walking them through step-by-step how to build their panoramas, how to make an outline, the creative process behind doing all of this. I probably should mention the project was creating moving panoramas for an original fairy tale ending that they all got to write. So after the whole group, she was able to just ping into specific students' Chromebooks through video chat and say, hey, so-and-so, I'm going to talk with you now. And she was able to just provide really a lot of individual support to each student, and just super accessible. So students planned out their reimagined fairy tale endings, and there were some standards that were addressed. They're on the next slides. So one of the standards was to analyze how visual and multimedia elements contribute to the meaning, tone, or beauty of a text. So the students were able to, as they were adding in these visual details to their projects and we were asking them questions, they were able to articulate how these elements really added to their fairy tale project, how to add it to the story. And we talked a lot about the standard with Sarah Frechette. She did a mini lesson on it. It was really incredible. And then Joe, if you want to go to the next one. And then the next one that we were looking at was just quoting accurately from a text when explaining what the text says and drawing inferences, and when drawing inferences from the text. So that really was just an engaging way to start the students thinking about inferencing, looking back at that original stories and drawing inferences from the text to help their own fairy tale endings make sense. And then I'll hand it over to Joe and her helper.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So these are a couple of the 5th grade student crankies, they're called. We learned a new term. And the students, with Sarah's help and advice, helped them build this cranky. So from the front, you're seeing the panoramic view. And then in the back, they built 2 scrolls, which they used to move their cranky from the first scene to the last. And then they did a voice voiceover video, which they, as Alyssa noted, they wrote themselves the ending to these fairy tales. They voiced over these fairy tales and then illustrated each of the scenes in the panoramas. So you'll see Catherine Shippert, a 5th grade student in my class, and on the right, this is William Shepard, another 5th grade student in my class. We recorded the videos using Flipgrid. We found that the sound technology worked a lot better than trying to record on Google Meet. So that was the technology that we used. So I'm screen sharing right now. So I'm going to try to go to my Flipgrid. And so I'm going to hit stop share, I think, and then try to go to my Flipgrid from here. So bear with me. Okay, and then I'm gonna go here. And that's not what you want. Okay, so, sorry, trying to find it. So I'm gonna exit out of that. Okay, here we go. So, can you guys still hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can.
And are you seeing my screen?
No.
Okay, that's a problem. All right, just a second. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, and now are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Flipgrid, the technology. So it was really great for Alyssa and I. We housed all of the crankies using this site, and then we could share that link. We shared that with Jen Hubbard, and she was able to look them over. And also the kids really enjoyed virtually. As you guys know, my classroom has no interactions with Alyssa's classroom. So this was a way that they could look at each other's work and share these crankies. So I'm gonna share Catherine's cranky with you first. They're very short.
The heroic Miss Sewell.
Sorry.
I heard what you said, and so did the king, and threw you in the woods to die. What's wrong? The evil woman is pretending to be me and is marrying the prince. I know where the palace is. I will eat that woman. Thank you. You are very heroic, Miss Sewell. You will eat the woman and marry the prince. And the princess marries the prince. You may now kiss the bride.
Okay, so that was Catherine. It is, as you noticed, it's hard for the kids to enunciate a little bit under the mask. That's a problem that we're all having. Excuse me. All right, find it. Go find it. I'll be with you in just a second. And the second one that I wanted sorry, my college student just moved back in 3 minutes ago before we started. And then the second one I wanted to share with you was Will's cranky. Now, Will Shepard is very interested in Greek mythology, so he sort of combined the classic fairy tale, The Goose Girl, and then put some elements from Greek mythology in that as well. Sorry, wrong cranky. So Will's cranky right here.
The Goose Girl with a Touch of Greek Mythology by William Shepard. Once there was an old queen who had a daughter, and they needed to send her off to go get married. Bye. that the evil waiting woman that they sent with her changed clothes with her, that way she could be the princess and be married to the prince. But when she went to announce herself to him at the castle, I am your queen, the king, the prince, realized that the waiting woman had a crown, and he said, "Hey, why are you wearing a crown?" So he sent the waiting woman into the underworld. For this crime, you shall be punished by getting cast into the underworld. Wait. And they all lived happily ever after on Mount Olympus. The end.
Okay, so the panoramas are very similar to that, and it was really great. We did a lot of pre-teaching of fairy tales. We talked about the difference between the Disney fairy tale, which has been made vivid and bright, and everybody lives happily ever after, to more the traditional fairy tales, which usually have some kind of dark element. The evil characters are always punished in some terrible, vicious way. So a few of them were a little dark, but for the purposes of this, Jen Hubbard very nicely allowed the kids some poetic license in these crankies. So we kept it in narrow focus. And then I did have a chance to talk to both Will and Catherine about what they liked about doing the project. Again, this is very brief. This is Will's exit interview.
Hi, I'm here with Will Shepard, one of our 5th grade puppeteers, and I've asked Will to think about what he liked most about doing the recent puppet project.
I liked doing the project because it was really, really fun. You got to make your own paper slideshow instead of it being on a computer.
Okay. And are you somebody who enjoys drawing?
Yes.
Okay.
So it was a very fun activity for me.
Okay, and then Catherine elaborated a little bit on her story, the fairy tale itself. So this is, let's see. Sorry, can't find Catherine. Where'd you go, Catherine? All right, Catherine has deleted her interview video, but maybe I found it. No, I didn't. Alyssa and I were both thrilled with how well the kids worked on this project. The art alone took many, many hours worth. The kids were really invested in the entire project. Sarah was so phenomenal to work with, both from a staff standpoint. She was patient. She was great with the kids. She was upbeat. Some of the kids were a little slower to engage with the project, and she just encouraged them to keep going. Her suggestions involved making the project better. She never made the kids feel like something was wrong with their interpretation of the fairy tale or that their artwork wasn't great. She was also able, without Alyssa and I giving her any information, she was able to sort of understand where the kids were at as far as reading levels. So she gave them some really great pointers on ways to make it visually tell the story rather than having to rely on printed text. So I think Alyssa and I both agree, and Jen, that it was such a wonderful project for the kids to do. They had a lot of fun doing it. And like Alyssa said, being able to do an activity with high engagement and having a resident artist work with us 100% remotely was a real treat for all of us. And it felt like, in a year where field trips aren't really going to happen, it felt it felt like a really fun time for them. So it was a great way for the cohorts were separated at that point. So it was a really great way also for cohort A and cohort B to do a project together and have them linked in this remote format. Does anybody have any questions for Alyssa and I?
I loved that. That was great. I remember when I was in 5th grade, which was decades and decades ago, I remember a puppeteer coming, and it still sticks with me. And particularly in a the year of the pandemic, I think this is awesome. Yeah, I liked it a lot.
I want to thank you both for presenting today, and also for your willingness to go out there and get that grant and to find this opportunity for kids. Because I really, really, we all know this is a very tough time. I think everybody's struggling a little bit to find ways to engage students in really meaningful learning during the remote learning days. And this is fantastic. I love that the kids had the opportunity to do this. So
I love I really like Alyssa and I have such a good partnership, because she's always about what we can do. And me being, I don't know, older and more cross, she's always like thinking of these possibilities, and it's really nice. And she has a lot of connections with the Arts Council and things. It's just really great working together on a project with another teacher. It feels like the old days, being able to collaborate in these pandemic times. It had a real pre-pandemic feel to it, which I think we both really appreciated.
Great. Any other feedback before we move on? Thank you so much. That was great. Inspirational.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. It was a little nerve-wracking presenting to you all, particularly after SJ's presentation, which was so amazing. So amazing. But I think we did okay, Alyssa. So I'll talk to you later. Bye, everybody. So great.
To stop sharing. There you go. Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So now I believe Morgan, you are up.
So we're a few minutes behind on schedule. If you guys want to skip mine until next month, that'd be all right.
We can do that? Or are you being facetious?
I am being facetious, but I will try to pick up a little bit of time. You have my report in your packet. The only fleshing out of that I'll give you is that we've had a few questions from the auditors, but we still haven't seen a draft yet. So I'm hoping by our December meeting we will. I do still owe you October reports, and if I can keep that in my head until tomorrow morning, I will get those out to you. And then I sent you a raft of documents yesterday, and I'm going to do a lot of screen sharing and hopping back and forth. So I am hoping first that you guys can see the annual meeting warning and not see my email. Is that correct? Perfect. So I included this in your packet. This is your first look at the warning. The Thursday, February 18th date was set by your voters. So that one you don't have to weigh in on. That will be when we have the in-person meeting. The first few articles are what you normally see at your meetings. There are 2 offices that are up for re-election this meeting. I believe the people who are up are Polly and Wendy. Polly, is that your understanding?
I have no idea. I don't keep track.
I'm fairly certain that that's correct. The requirements for gathering signatures and petitions are different from what I remember because of COVID. So I've got an email out to Billy Joe to ask what she needs to have folks get on the ballot. but it will be those 2 seats, both for 3-year terms. Article 5 is the normal one that will fill in once the budget is set. And the second Article 5, the text that's in blue highlight, I want you all to take a look at. I've not run this by your lawyer yet, but this is something that that some folks down in the southern part of the state have done. Normally, when you go into a budget election with a large fund balance in the past, we've often asked voters for permission to put a specific dollar amount into a capital fund, or in the case of Enosburg, into the property acquisition fund, basically pulling that out of the general fund at that time. What this article purports to do is to give the board the authority to do that on a year-to-year basis. So when we got into, say, April of next year, I would come to you and I would say, we're planning on having this much money left over. Let's put half of it into a capital reserve, and then you would get to do that without further voter approval and without having to wait until March of the next year to access that money. So I brought this to NMV as well last week, and I wanted to get that in front of you and to see as a board if that was something you wanted to explore.
Am I reading that correctly, that it's only if we have surplus funds?
Right. That's
okay.
Correct.
And would we not put money in a capital repairs and improvements line without a surplus, or no?
The other way to do it is to actually add it into your budget as a line item, and you could certainly do that. I think on both sides, because of the vagaries of tuition income for Enosburg-Richford and tuition payments for the NMV side, we have, instead of doing that, we've always known that you can have some pretty big swings and then wait for a year where, in your case, last year, you were able to bring in a lot more tuition income and then use those swings to do it. The other advantage is that, in any year, you're going to run hopefully a fund balance or possibly a deficit, and that tends to play havoc on your tax rate as you have a lot of money to give back, or you're needing to cover a deficit. So this gives you the ability to mitigate that somewhat without going to the voters, without going to them again. So I don't know if there are any other questions on that. Article 6 is a normal one that we put every year. I will run this by the lawyers again. I actually think that you have the authority to borrow even if the voters don't give you authority. So this may drop off from the final version. But at this point, I've got that on there, and this is what you had on last year, and then back when you were individual town districts, you had it on every year. Article 7 is something that I'll work with Beth to finalize, but this is in regards to the property next to Richford High School that the town is hoping the school district will take ownership of. You're muted, Polly.
Yeah, I wasn't saying anything. That was my purple
Okay.
look.
Is that still on the table?
As far as I know, that is still on the table. Beth can weigh in if she's heard something different.
It's still on the table. I think that Andy indicated to me that he'd been in contact with Polly and that it wasn't going to happen in November, but they preferred to do it in February, or is that when it is, February or March? March. And that they were proceeding with tearing the building down. I don't think they've done it yet, and we're hoping we could just reimburse them for the cost. And Kylie Duso and Andy were working to see if they could get the taxes abated.
So yeah, that's exactly the conversation I had with Andy, because at November, the ballots had already been mailed out because of the mailing out the ballots for this election. So we had talked about, would it be possible to wait till February? They were okay with that. But yes, the question that came up was that they would want to be reimbursed for the removal, like they would tear it down, but that there would have to be some costs incurred with actually removing the debris. So I asked the question, well, should that just be a sale price, or should we just reimburse the funds? I guess we can have that conversation.
Hey, Morgan, does that mean if we have to reimburse them, we have to rewrite Article 7?
If we are going to purchase it for that price, we would need to rewrite Article 7. If we're going to pay for the removal of the debris out of the general fund, I'll probably run that one by your lawyer.
I had another question just even regarding, don't want to be a wet blanket, but what happens in the case of no gatherings of people? What is the plan B as far as having these types of meetings? I remember there was that resolution regarding Australian ballot and being able to do that. Is that a plan if there can be no gatherings?
Yeah, so that's something that we're looking into. I don't have anything for you today. The big ticket items on your meeting are already done by Australian ballot on town meeting day. So really it's these first articles up here about moderator, clerk, and treasurer.
So I know a little bit about that. They're working to make it so that you can have your annual meeting virtually, that people could lock into a meeting like this, and you could do it this way because of the potential gathering restrictions. I don't know that there's any final decision, but I've been a part of a couple conversations about that.
Okay.
And I think Article 5 is a good idea, Morgan.
This one, okay. What I will need to figure out is if we would need a separate one for the fund balance that I'm anticipating for this year, because we haven't already gone to the voters with this. So there may be 2 articles back to back, one that will read this way and one will read specific dollar amount from the FY20 fund balance. So stay tuned on that. But if this is something that you guys are interested in, I'll pursue that with the lawyers. Can you now see one of the 2 bullseyes that I sent you?
Yes.
Okay. So there are a couple of graphs that I am planning on including in the packets that go to your voters. You've had a little bit of time to look over this one, and really what I'm trying to show here is the broad level types of costs that make up your budget, and really to try to hammer home the point that 3/4 of your budget is in people. And then the next biggest chunk is this other services, and this is where you're going to find your special ed people, your central office people, and then also tuition payments to other districts. And then when you get into things like supplies and utilities and some of those other services, even your debt, that's comparatively small potatoes compared to the rest of the budget. So I don't know if you've got any feedback on that, any changes you want to see, if that was clear to you. If anyone thinks it's a bad idea to put it in there.
Yeah, I do. To me, it's just kind of nebulous. It it didn't really give me any, I don't know how to describe it, but it didn't give me any real information, I guess. And like all the terms were kind of, well, like stuff. You know, I mean, all the terms were kind of, you know, nebulous, like what was other services, you know, debt and other. It wasn't really informative as far as I thought. I like the other one better.
Okay. And I was planning on doing both because they look at it differently, but we can have that discussion.
I think we talked.
This is by program. Oh, go ahead, Lynn.
I think we talked in the other meeting about, you know, these are drafty and the labels, certainly we could better identify the labels. I think that part of the demonstrating how much of the budget is taken up by those categories, but I think we could work on what the label itself is. I know stuff is on a label that Morgan would land on in the end.
Right. So this
and there was one that said other services.
Yeah, and I can certainly
I was just
flesh
saying
those
that
out. Go ahead, Polly.
I think we might have lost Polly for a moment.
Okay. So these are categories that that we report to the AOE on. I can certainly flesh them out with different descriptions, and that's the same with this one.
There was other services working.
You're very lagged, Polly. Oh, there she goes. I think she's probably going to log back in, Morgan.
Okay. Yeah, I can't actually see her when I'm screen sharing. So this is the second one that was in your packet. Again, it's looking at it a little bit differently, but this blue area is the cost that's really spent directly on instructing your students. So it's your pre-K 12 teachers, your special education costs, athletics, co-curricular, et cetera. This red wedge over here is the cost of administering the schools in the district. And then in this other, you're picking up the cost of plant, transportation, and your debt again.
I like this one better.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on those two?
I prefer this one better as well.
Do we have to have either or can we include them both?
You can include them both, and I think that's the direction that that the other side is planning on going.
Can you go to the other one really quick, Morgan?
Yep. So again, the goal in my mind is this one is showing that most of your budget is going to the people you hire and their benefits. And the second one is, you look at it from a program level, most of your budget, 3/4 of it is really going to the direct services that are going to kids.
Morgan, can you, under employee benefits, can you peel out healthcare out of that?
Yes.
That might be kind of useful too.
Okay. So that's going to be, that line's going to come right about here is my guess. It's going to be probably 3/4 of that, but I can certainly do that. Two other graphs that we can include if you'd like. This one is a projected number of students per licensed teacher. So licensed teachers would include your classroom teachers, your unified arts teachers, librarians, most of your guidance counselors. This would not include your special ed teachers because they're paid for out of the SU. The reason that I'm proposing including this is is a bit defensive. My anticipation is that given the crisis in the state college system, that when Governor Scott rolls out his next budget address, he will again be beating the drum of 5 kids to every adult in our school system. And if we can only reduce that ratio, that will be able to free up enough money to plug it into the state college system and keep those schools going. So I thought it might be good to maybe reframe that discussion and really focus on the number of licensed teachers that you've got in front of your kids, which is obviously much different budget compared to what I'm projecting in terms of the kids that you're going to have in school next year.
I think one of the points that you made in a previous meeting, Morgan, was about the apples and oranges, essentially, that, when they tried to get at what that ratio is, it kind of depends on your contracted services and what services you're running locally. It really has a big impact on the number of adults per student. So it's not always an apples to apples comparison. So I think that being able to look at it through the lens of licensed teachers certainly is helpful. So I don't know if you want to say anything more on that in terms of.
Yeah, well, I think that's why they have not really been able to force anything on this topic yet. But as an example, you contract out your student transportation. So those employees of Terracell are not showing up in your employee count, whereas there are other SUs that hire those drivers directly and buy the buses. And so those would count against them in their account. You guys sometimes use CAT workers or autism workers from NCSS rather than hiring paraeducators to be with those students. And so the AOE, I think, hasn't really figured out how to make those differences be equal in terms of coming up with a real ratio, and then eventually something that's going to be a target, and then something that will eventually become a mandatory target.
Same thing for food service too.
Mm-hmm. And then I threw in a chart for projections based on October 1st enrollment. So everything from 2016 here to 2020 are actual numbers, and then 21 through 25 would be projections. And I can go into the detail of how I'm making those projections, but I'm basically just looking at an average from the past 3 years for kindergarten and pre-K, and then for the rest of the grades going back a little bit farther and coming up with a graduation rate. So if on average you had 10 first graders and then the next year you had 11 second graders, you were picking up 10% between first and second, and then projecting that forward with the actual numbers of who you have in your buildings as of October 1st last year.
Does that decline in the Inusburg High School make sense to you, Morgan? If the middle school is pretty flat, is that just other schools, tuition schools that have decreased enrollment during that time period?
So it does make sense to me because part of it is the impact of smaller classes graduating or larger classes graduating, and then bigger ones or smaller ones backfilling. I can certainly show you that. You tend to see at the two high schools, you're going to be catching kids who are dropping out, kids who are going to early college, which you don't have in the elementary schools or the middle school. So for these two, these are not answers that I need tonight, but I wanted to kind of briefly walk you through them and let you know that they're out there, and we can decide in December and January when we finalize the voter packet if you think those are going to be useful or not.
Can you do, for your second graph there, can you do a, so you got the Richford kind of middle and high school together, but you separated out the middle from the high school in Enosburg. Should you put those, should you put those together?
I certainly can.
And then my other question is, should you put a kind of a fit line? So average number of students in the district in there as well, or no?
Would average be relevant? So average per school, or would you want to see a total?
No, like total average students for the district.
Yep. Yep, I can do that.
So I'm having a little bit of whiplash and I don't know how to, so transparency is important. But, you know, we've constantly talked about attracting teachers, getting quality staff, and yet this picture maybe brings our staffing levels in question. And so I understand transparency, seeing where the numbers are, but I just wonder just how this looks presented wise, if it doesn't look like, I don't know. I'm feeling conflicted. That's all I'm going to say.
Certainly understood. And you know what I'll do is I'll continue to tweak these if you have suggestions like Rick's, and if they get left on the cutting room floor, I'm not going to be hurt. I think it's probably information that I'll keep bringing back to you as a board, because I think certainly as we refine some of these enrollment predictions, that's something that you should have in your mind. In a way, this is maybe not the ideal year to start it, because we know that 2020, because of COVID, those numbers are artificially lower because of kids who have opted for homeschool who otherwise wouldn't have, or maybe doing early college completely, who otherwise would have maybe stayed at the high school and taken a class or two.
That was my next question, was this is October 1 enrollment, and if COVID numbers played into that. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I've kind of taken them out of the calculation for pre-K, because we know that there are people who our pre-K numbers would have been higher if we were allowed to have more kids in the building. That's not a mandatory enrollment like the K through 12 grades are. That was looking at those numbers, we know that those are artificially low. So I've kind of taken those out of the projection. I have not really done that for the higher grades.
So Polly, what's your concern? What specifically is your concern?
Well,
Polly?
so for instance, we talk about attracting teachers, getting quality people in the room. However, the picture we've just presented is that we tend to be overstaffed. That's what it's so that first grid where it's like this huge section of this is what's personnel, which makes it look pretty crazy. But the next graph, the next pie graph showed, well, yeah, that personnel translates into instruction. Like, these are the people teaching your children. This is what creates a quality education, right? Like, I feel like some of these graphics imply that there's too much staff in the building.
Are you talking?
But yet we work really hard on attracting them. Sorry.
Are you talking about this graph we're looking at right now, or some of the previous ones, Polly?
All of them. Like this one looks like, and when you look at this, you're like, oh, enrollment's going really down in our buildings. Oh, look how much personnel we're paying. Like, oh, look at the student ratio. Like it just kind of looks like that. But yeah, and I just wonder if you're, putting it, again, transparency, these are real numbers. I get that. We should show that. However, I just wonder with these layered on top of each other, it looks like if you had to cut a budget, this sets up a perfect scenario. That's just my thought.
I look at that a little bit differently, probably just through the lens of, I don't know that it is painting a picture that we're overstaffed. I think that the reality is, I just sat on a conference call today for a couple hours talking about the weighting study and the resources needed to provide students who live in poverty with adequate resources. And I think that one of the things that we need to begin to recognize, I know we're already recognizing it, but we need to be communicating about is that we need to be adequately supporting our students, all students, including those who live in poverty and those students who are really struggling with mental health and behavioral challenges. There's a lot going on for our students, and I would go to bat and debate pretty firmly that we are not overstaffed. If anything, I think that we have some ground to make up in terms of our service levels in some places.
So maybe that's what we should be communicating.
I wonder
you know
if
what I'm saying?
Is there a way to like weave that into the narrative and create some sort of visual around the specific needs that our schools are facing around poverty or any of those pieces that might be an important kind of that story behind the numbers?
That's kind of what I'm thinking is like we understand what that means, but if you were just looking at tax rate graphs, yeah, this is a lot of money and these are a lot of people, and so but we know that we need those people in order to create a quality education,
right? If we don't
and support our kids.
If we don't fill in that narrative, folks are going to do it for themselves. And I know my mother would look at this graph and say like, oh, budgets shouldn't be going up because enrollment's going down. And so instead of having to backfill later, but instead to present that narrative up front.
Yeah, I think that, that's certainly an incredibly important part of this. And I think that that's something, Polly, maybe we can really try to work on with the joint letters and the mailers this year. And, I'll certainly try to hit on it in my annual report, as hopefully the principals will too.
Is there, Lynn, do you feel like there's some kind of visual we could create based on that information, like a way to present that visually as within this? Maybe not within it, but with this?
You mean in terms of number of students?
The needs that you're facing in your schools and how the acuity of those needs are ever increasing. I just think that's a narrative that's not understood by all folks. And the more we can put that out there over and over, I don't know exactly what data, I could think more about it, I guess. What would be the most reflective data, but just a way for you to visually show that the clinical acuity, the needs that are the basic needs that aren't being met of families, like if there's a way to capture that and help people who might not otherwise know understand that and how the immense role that schools are playing in investing in building resilience in these kids so that they have their outcomes over time.
Yeah, maybe we could put our heads together on that. Amy, I would love to tease that out a little bit more.
Yeah, I hope I have some information or an answer.
I'm certainly game. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a good reminder for the community is like just because a class size might have 4 fewer students than the previous year doesn't mean, if your third grade's 4 or 5 kids smaller than the grade ahead of them, you're not going to cut your third grade teacher because you still have to offer third grade, even if you might have a smaller group coming up that's moving through your system. That just, you get bubble years and you get small years. And I know, Rick, your son is in a pretty big bubble year here in Enosburg. That was one of the bigger classes that's gone through, and without them there you do see a decrease because there were probably almost 25 more of them just for whatever reason than any other grades. So things like that have a big impact in small schools.
Well, that's why I thought putting that line, you know, with the average or for the total number of pupils in the district would help that.
Yep. So the other chart that will be included in some form, but I didn't put it in your packet, is this one, which you've seen before, which I think helps make the case that you guys are not overspending. And again, this is on a per pupil factor. So this is from last year, and you see you've got the state average here about halfway down the chart. And then our two towns are sitting here down towards the bottom. I don't have data yet for the next fiscal year. I'll probably have it maybe by your December meeting, but this is one that we would include as well.
I think that why this is such a good visual for people is because it's a comparison. The other visuals don't have, like, if you don't know anything about how a budget for a school works or what other people are doing, it's hard. It's depends on, I guess, where you sit, conservative or more liberal. And when you look at that, you don't. But if you can compare it and show, like, we're actually kicking ass in a lot of places, and you know, making better fiscally responsible decisions based on the need, even like, so if there's a way to compare that to other folks, that's meaningful. Like for me, this is the one that I can look at and be like, okay, I get what that means.
Yep.
Morgan, is there a reason you went 4 or 5 years out on the projections and not 1 or 2 years?
I guess there's not. Could certainly do any sort of scale. Obviously, the shorter time period that you go out, the more likely it is to be somewhat accurate. So in terms of charts, that's what I wanted to show you tonight. You can certainly fire off any thoughts that you have directly to me by email, and I'm happy to tweak these and run different drafts by people individually, and then bring version 2 to your next board meeting in December. The other piece that was in your packet was here somewhere. This is the detail version of the first draft of the budget. So I will go through this sort of quickly, and I'll call out some highlights on it. It's the same format that you guys saw last year. And I think at this point, as in years past, I've worked with the principals on trying to really hammer down any staffing changes that are anticipated, both your employees and then some contracted employees from NCSS. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time drilling into the lines that in the big picture don't amount to so much. So as we get into the December and January drafts, I will have spent more of my attention on that. If you look at this, just as a reminder, this first line is for early ed teachers for Inusburg Elementary. So in the two columns, FY22, you've got the dollar amount and the FTE, and then the FY21, you've got the FTE there as well. You'll see on the second line too, for FY21, we had projected 0.06 of a paraeducator in the early ed program and not projecting any right now. Paraeducators are all going through their time study. I think it's this week. And so the percentage of where they spend their time between early ed, regular ed, and special ed is going to change, and you'll probably see those changes in your December draft, certainly by your January draft. And so for this one, I would say don't worry too much about where the paraeducators' time is budgeted, and more about the total number of paraeducators, because that is going to shift now. It'll shift in the spring when we do a second time study, and then shift again when we have those assignments for FY22. So Inusburg Elementary, on this document are pages 1 through 9. It'll go through, all the sections will go through your early ed, direct instruction, nursing, library, technology, guidance is in there. Again, there's a principal and plant, field trips, transportation, after school program, then into special ed, and then athletics, co-curricular, and then it'll wrap up with a subtotal for each school. So in Inusburg Elementary, the major changes are in terms of people that were about a half a person down in terms of custodial staff. Currently, Jen has 2.6 custodians. She's got some anticipated retirements and is planning to start next year with only 2 full-time custodians. No change to teaching staff is anticipated. And again, this is from budget to budget, so it's not necessarily who's in the building right now. And then in terms of paraeducators, there's a net increase of 4 of them, budget to budget. One of those would be replacing a CAT worker who you currently have in your budget. So an increase in terms of your employee, but not an overall in terms of who's in the building. And I will say we're talking budget to budget, and we are bringing back all of the teachers who are currently teaching in the virtual academy and making the assumption that we will be back in-person learning for everyone as of next September. That's, I'll leave it up to you whether that's a rosy prediction or not. Starting on page 9, we've got the high school in Enosburg, and that goes through, I think, to page 18. Similar categories throughout. In terms of that budget, there's no change to the number of licensed teaching staff. There is an increase in terms of paraeducator staff just under 1.0, and that's primarily due to a one-on-one for a kiddo who will be leaving the elementary school and moving up to the middle school.
Morgan, am I reading that right? Where it says location middle high school with a difference of 246,000?
In this draft, you are, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Richford starts on page 18 with the elementary school. And again, same categories as the other. Goes through, I think, to page 27 and ends there. In terms of changes to Richford Elementary, we're down a fraction of a teacher. You had a 0.6 and a 0.5 in your FY21 budget. One of those hadn't been filled, and one of those is an anticipated retirement for next year. And so we're budgeting to combine those two into a 1.0. And then in terms of paraeducators, this budget's anticipating 2 3/4 increase. So not quite 3 more paraeducators. Richford High School starts on page 27. again, follows through up until page 35. There, in terms of changes person to person, there's a 1/4 increase in terms of teaching staff, budget to budget. I think we had an increase of 1 para. And then something that I need to go in and correct is that we've got your athletic director is currently at a 0.2, and I had bumped that up in the budget process to a 1.0. It wasn't a change in terms of salary. And I see that your AD is on the call right now, so I'm sorry to deliver that bad news to you, Jim. But I'll get an accurate FTE on that for your next draft. Cold Hollow starts on page 36. No, I'm sorry, your district level stuff starts on page 36. So this is where you're going to have your universal pre-K tuition payments, payments to other tech centers for vocational tuition, and then your school board level expenses. Nate's budget then starts on page 38. In terms of personnel, at this point, there are no changes to teaching or support staff in Nate's budget. What I've done in this draft for salaries is for paraeducators. I think I've given everyone a 75-cent increase, which is what your union support staff have negotiated for next year. You do not have a contract with your teaching staff. For this draft, I've put in a flat 3% increase to current salaries. When you have retirements and you hire teachers for cheaper, that gives you a little bit more money to play with. And then as you have teachers who announce column movements, you have less money to play with. Those column movements will be announced on December 1st. So I will possibly change that 3% figure if I think that that you have more column movements than the budget can support, or if you don't need as much money to do those column movements. And it looks like you will be warning this budget without really much of an idea of where you're going to end up in terms of your teacher negotiations. The other big movers on this budget that I haven't updated yet, I've just carried over the special ed assessment, the transportation assessment, and the central office assessment. The SU board is going to get their first look at a budget next week, and so hopefully by your December budget, I'll have something that's a little more accurate in terms of those assessments. We really won't have that finalized until mid-December, though, at the earliest. So that is the speed round, blowing through your budget. I will, in December, give you your first look at your revenue, which in terms of tax rates is equally as important. I had tipped to you in the past that I do anticipate that your audit's going to show a significant fund balance from the year that we've just ended, and that's the money that you get to put forward to buy down the tax rate for this budget.
Great, thanks, Morgan.
So I'll throw that out to any questions on that.
Yeah. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I have just one question, Morgan. All the COVID money that we're getting, like I'm getting a lot of money, and is that revenue going to hurt us in the future?
We don't, I don't think it's going to hurt us for FY22. For the CRF money for this year, much of the money that we get will be basically offset by tax money that we're due. So it's not going to hurt us, but it's going to be a wash. For things that we have spent that we haven't budgeted for, we'll get reimbursed for that. And in terms of the FY22 budget, I have not really increased anything, anticipating that we're going to have to continue to spend money changing our buildings, or you know, and not anticipating a significant increase in terms of supplies. At some point as a board, you're going to have to make the call about whether we want to build in a buffer for that. My gut tells me that if we're in year 2 of a pandemic, and we are going to see those costs, that there will still be federal money coming down to help offset those. And again, in thinking about the fact that people are 3/4 of your budget, I anticipate that we could go into FY22 in a similar remote learning arrangement and not have to add on any staff.
Okay, anything else before we move to Lynn? Nope. Okay.
So I'd just say, if you want to give me any feedback or fire any questions, just shoot me an email.
Will do. Okay.
So I think I can be pretty quick tonight, I think. So I'm going to give you an update under personnel. In terms of administrator negotiations, we spoke last time. I have been in contact with the administrators who are up for negotiations, and we'll be doing that in the next few weeks. So I expect to be able to report back to you at the December board meeting where we've landed with administrator negotiations for next year. We have a couple of resignations. We have Amy Merriam, who was hired as the French teacher for Richford Junior Senior High School in Enosburg High School. She has resigned effective this month. So I'm going to ask the board to take action, and I have a counter action below. So I don't know if you're looking at my notes or not. So if you could I would ask the board to make a motion to accept the resignation of Amy Merriam.
Have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Okay, I'm gonna take a vote. Rick, I'll start with you.
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Okay, so moved.
This one is informational because it's support staff. We also, I accepted the resignation of Sarah Sanborn, who was a Richford Elementary School paraeducator. We have Beth and Joseph and Rachel made quick work of hiring, and they have found a replacement French teacher. So I'd ask the board to make a motion to hire Amy Henneveld to be the new shared French teacher between the two schools.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Rick made the motion. Rick, you want to vote?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Okay, so moved.
And here's just some informational. Jen Hubbard has found a literacy interventionist for the elementary school. That's not anything that I'm going to ask you to approve. It's a grant funded position, so that's going to go to the SU board. But because it's in one of your schools, I just wanted to give you that heads up there. So Misty McCartney will be joining us. We have hired 3 paraeducators at Enosburg Elementary School: Tara Jones, Keisha Bahamundi, Bailey Brunel. And we have hired 2 paraeducators at Richford Elementary, Cassandra Gunn and Amy Fackler. In terms of retirement, we're starting, it's that time of year. They have a December 1st deadline to let us know. So we've got a couple that impact schools in this district. So the only one that you're going to act on tonight is Lyle Willie. He's the Richford Elementary librarian. He has notified us that this will be his last school year. So I'll ask that the board make a motion to accept Lyle's resignation or retirement notification, sorry.
I'll make the motion.
Polly, you still here?
Might be you, Rick.
Aye.
Great.
Kevin?
Oh, yeah.
Here she is.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there she is. Okay.
So I think there was a motion made, Polly, and Rick has voted aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
So moved.
So we also have Pat Brown, a longtime special educator who is, I believe, served Richford Elementary and now Richford High School for the majority, if not all of his career. This is informational. He's decided that this will be his last year working for us. So that will go to the SU board at the next meeting. So congratulations to both Lyle and to Pat. Just an update on some remaining open positions. We're still looking for paraeducators at Richford Elementary, and we do have a long-term sub paraeducator position at Inusburg Elementary that is currently open. So I don't have anything under student, and I want to talk to you a little bit about a board retreat. So last year, right before COVID hit, we had been talking about planning a board retreat, and that kind of just halted and we didn't do a board retreat over the summer. So I've been talking with Mike DeWeese about availability to help us kind of work through a board retreat and go back to what we had originally talked about, and that's kind of working collaboratively to, as a new merged board, figure out like continue to work on developing that all our kids goal of the whole merge piece, and also some visioning and some goal setting for the work down the road. So Mike is pretty willing to work with us and consult on a board retreat for us. And what I'm hoping is that you will agree to doing some work, maybe an evening or two, late January to early February, if that could work. So what are your thoughts on having a board retreat?
I really like the idea. I think the more we can come together in our thinking, and you know, when we first merged, we were all kind of like in it together and thinking of it the same way. And then I think I know even for me, kind of going back into some patterns of like what board you sit on with your being on bunch. I don't know how people feel, but like sometimes, I don't know, would a Saturday maybe day, or is that off the table? I don't want to take anybody's weekend, but sometimes just coming in for maybe an afternoon versus a couple of nights might be an option. I don't know. What do you think?
No week.
So that is off the table.
My other question, what teacher and sports staff, or I guess we just teacher this year, negotiations, are we doing those in January and February?
Yes.
So do we want to move the board retreat maybe a little bit later, or do you want to try to do it during the same time frame?
It is totally up to you. I'm looking for the board to give me some direction on that time.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter to me. It would be better probably actually for me if we can move it out past the negotiations. I don't know how many nights that's going to take. So if we can, so I think it's a really good idea. I think we need to do it. but if we can move it out later, that would probably be better. I could certainly probably manage to do it in January and February if somebody has strong feelings that way.
Well, actually, March is a bad idea, and I hadn't really thought about this, Rick, but in case you have a new board member, I mean, March is where you kind of reset and you take a look at roles and responsibilities, and if you have a new board member coming on, I don't know if you will or not, but if you happen to, that might be a good time.
Okay. I think March I think would be perfect.
I was going to suggest March, April, just for that fact when we may have 1 or 2 new board members coming on, and like you said, it's good training and learning for somebody new if there is somebody new.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get back to Mike. I think he'll be really helpful in this process.
I'm smelling a mutiny. No, March and April's good.
You're out, Polly. We would never let you out.
I smell what you're laying down.
I was reading between those lines too.
Nobody's laying anything down. You have to stay right where you are. So I'm going to give you, I'm going to try to be concise in my COVID update because I do believe that you've been getting additional information along the way. So I'll just talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on right now that are kind of taking time and attention. So we have returned now our K through 5 students to a 4-day in-person, 1-day learning from home hybrid model. So it has been both exciting and challenging at the same time. I think that all of the principals would agree with me that it was exciting to get students back. Partway into that transition on October 23rd, I believe it was October 23rd, the Department of Health and agency made some changes to the guidance that made that bringing students back to in-person and being able to keep them back in person a little trickier than what we had originally thought. So just a few things in the guidance that have really pushed us to think as creatively and flexibly as possible. The biggest was originally in August in our guidance, it was 3-foot distance for our K through 5 students. And if we were able to use a barrier, like a Lexan or plexiglass barrier, we could mitigate some of that distance. So we didn't have to have the full 3 feet if you had the barrier instead. So it was really distance or barrier. So many of our schools purchased a lot of Lexan, a lot of plexiglass, and were able to get all of the students back. So we've had to reset at this point because the shift that came on October 23rd, partway through our transition back, was to a rigid 3 feet, even if you had the barrier. So I'll just play that out a little as to what that looks like in our schools. So we have until November 16th to be fully in compliance with that minimum 3 feet. And again, I'm talking mostly about pre-K through 5 or K through 5 because those are the kids who are back to more time in person. So we now have with one school on the other side that has one less wall than they originally had because we had to take that down in order to find enough space. We have gyms. We have a gym at Richford Elementary School that's now a 4th grade classroom. We have other gyms that are now housing all of the tables that we were originally using in classrooms, and we have had to order hundreds of student desks so that we could have smaller workspaces for individual students and to try to maximize all the space we have. So the principal will tell you that they are right up against the maximum limits in some of those spaces. And I'm looking at Jen Hubbard because I know she's being as creative as possible and as flexible as possible, but we're having to make some tough decisions about how far can we go before we have to look at, can we continue to sustain this number of students in person? Or if we're going to sustain them in person, do we have to reassign some of our teaching staff to create new classroom spaces in the building? And we've been looking at, are there larger spaces that we can move certain groups of kids in? I think what's complicating this is people are getting more comfortable, even though the infection rates throughout the state are ramping up. I think that families are getting a little more comfortable with being in person. So we're seeing more students return to in-person learning, both from the virtual academy and from the students who originally indicated that they were going to homeschool this year. So that's adding to the complexity there. But I will say, these administrators are incredibly creative, and if there is a solution, they will find it. It might require, you might see some storage containers on our school properties to manage some of the stuff that we don't quite have space and or know what to do with, but they're working hard because the priority is really to keep kids in person. So the other piece that shifted in the guidance was the HVAC. There are metrics that are now there that were not there in the original guidance. So what we have found is that, you know, we've been working towards all of the HVAC expectations and recommendations. The reality is there's a limited number of contractors in the state of Vermont. So many of our schools are on wait lists to try to get those contractors in. So your principals are on it, and we're working to try to get people in so that we can do the things we need to do to be able to report out on the measurements that are now identified in the HVAC metrics in the newest guidance. So we'll be reporting back out to you once we have some data on those metrics. The other piece that was a little tricky, I think, for some people to digest is transportation in the winter. So we are going to continue to encourage parents to transport their students if they can, because the busing airflow is a requirement. In order for us to be able to bus students, we have to keep windows open no matter the temperature outside on the bus. So kids need to be really ready to ride on the bus, be prepared for the cold while they're riding on the bus. So we have to have 2 windows in the front, 2 windows in the back, and if the roof hatch is operational, that needs to be open. Driver's window needs to be open if the driver can safely drive with the window open. I know sometimes there's that fogging up thing that happens across the windshield that they're having to navigate. I had a driver tell me too, like, my glasses fog up and I struggle a little to see. So if people are dealing with some strange new realities in the COVID world that we're working in. So so just know you might hear some grumblings about that, but we don't have a choice about the airflow that needs to happen on the buses. So the other big piece that we're dealing with now is maintaining adequate staffing levels. And I just want to put this on your radar because as we're heading into the holiday season, we're seeing a couple of things happen. We're seeing that more staff members are having to quarantine for a variety of reasons, whether it's because they're symptomatic or as the infections continue to increase in the state, they may be identified as a close contact to someone who's tested positive, or they may be subject to a travel quarantine. So the principals are having to navigate having decreased staffing in the buildings. So just know that that is going to make it challenging as we move forward to be able to maintain the level of in-person learning. Our hope and our goal is that we'll be able to sustain where we are for as long as we can, and maybe right through if it's at all possible. And at the same time, I want you to be aware and cognizant of those challenges are increasing, and we have a threshold of what we would need in order to sustain that in-person learning. I think that the other piece, the last piece that I'll just share about is the other bit of guidance that has come out recently is the winter sports guidance. So that has been somewhat controversial. So I think if you've seen it at all, it does allow a path forward for sports like hockey and basketball and cheerleading with some restrictions. It does not allow a path forward for wrestling or indoor track. It allows a path forward for snowboarding, alpine skiing, downhill skiing, and sports such as that. I probably missed a sport or two. Again, there are some restrictions about the transportation and what that looks like as kids are going to games. There are limits on when practices can start and when games can actually start, so it really pushes the season back a couple of weeks. The big difference is there are no spectators allowed at games. So the only people allowed in there are the athletes, the officials, the coaches, and then essential game personnel like clock keeper and the scorekeepers and just the referees, and that's it. No one else is allowed to be in the gym. So some pretty strong health and safety guidelines that we have to meet.
Is the intent to live stream those, Lynn?
Yes, so all of the principals have been working on figuring out how to live stream those. The tricky part that we're trying to navigate through, we see how to make it work at the high schools. What's a little harder is figuring out, and we're working on it, we aren't in a place where we've made any decision yet, but figuring out how do we move forward with some of the smaller schools who don't have their gym available right now because it's a 4th grade classroom in Kelly and Richford, or because it's the workroom for teachers, it's their storage room, it's, you know, it's 15 different things right now for most people. So again, people are being really creative, and they're, you know, there are some storage units coming into certain places to try to navigate some of these things. And we're going to do our best. We've got some questions that need to be answered in terms of health and safety and what we can and can't do. And then we need to problem solve through some of the barriers that we're facing. So the last thing is I found out today's press conference, it was announced that all teachers and staff will be tested for COVID next week. So we're working through the logistics of that. Their state is providing PCR tests for all of our employees. It's voluntary. I worked with the contact from the Department or the Agency of Education today. We're going to have testing sites, one in each town. Logistically trying to navigate how to get coverage for teachers to be able to drive to, even if it's the town next door. It was really hard to figure out. So we're going to end up with the 6 testing sites. After next week, they're going to do all the teachers and staff in the entire state, again, voluntarily. And then after that, the intention is to, at least through December, do 25% of the teachers and staff in the state each week. So at the end of the month, everyone will have been tested again in December. So any questions on all of that COVID-related update?
Lynn, I missed the press conference today, but was there anything said about the possibility of having kids regularly tested?
There was not. Well, I say that. I had a meeting that started partway through, so I got to listen right until they shifted to the questions. So there was nothing in the presentation, but it doesn't mean that there wasn't any information that was shared during the question section. Any other questions? I just want to point out how much time I just made up on our agenda.
Nice. Good job. All right, thanks, Lynn. Next, we have principals for board reports. Kelly, do you have anything to add other than what's in your report?
I do not. It's just informational.
Okay, great.
Did we lose Polly?
Sorry. Nope, I was muted. Beth, you're next. Do you have anything to add other than what's in your board report?
No, mine was all informational.
Okay, great. Jen, do you have anything other than what's in your board report?
Nope, mine was all informational.
Great, thanks.
You just did Beth, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I got a couple questions for Beth.
Ooh, hot spot.
Lucky Beth.
What's your question?
So I see under her continuous school improvement plan, she's made a couple of goals for herself, which I think are awesome. I was just wondering, like on the first one, I think you had 90% improvement in individual SBAC scores by June of 2021. I just was wondering, A, where you were now compared to where you want to be then? And any idea on what happens at a state level or other schools with that metric?
So we didn't take the SBAC exam last year at all. And I believe what it says, I don't have it in front of me, that 90% of all the students will show improvement. Is that what it says? I don't have it in front of me. I have to look.
Yep, nope, that's what it says. So I just didn't know what percentage of students in previous years had shown.
We've been close, really close, because that has been a goal. We're working on individual improvement versus necessarily, if a student's at a 1, going to a 3 is a pretty lofty goal, but showing improvement in their scale score or a year of growth is what we've been focusing on. And we've been really close because the teachers have set goals for classes for 100% of their classes to show growth, every individual. And we've made it in a couple of classes and been in the 80s and 90s for others. I don't know about statewide.
And then my other question is, how do you think you're going to encourage more kids to take either the dual enrollment or the whatever the other term for that is?
So the last several years, we've increased, we've made a conscious decision to focus on concurrent classes or concurrent dual enrollment classes versus AP classes, because we think financially it makes sense, and we think that it makes sense for kids, because if you take an AP class, you have to pass the exam, number 1, and number 2, not all colleges will accept them. However, if we are having Doug McDonald, who we're paying as a teacher anyway, teach a statistics class through VTC, we haven't had one college say they aren't going to transfer that credit. And so many of our kids are graduating with more and more college credits, and they're seeing the financial benefit of doing that. So they can take their 2 free classes with maybe an online class or actually going to a college. And then here they can take a 3-credit class for $150 because we're paying for the teacher already. So I think that that's one of the ways that we're doing that, is to bring them local. My first year here, we offered our first college course, and now we're offering about 5 a year here. So making them more local, number 1, and number 2, showing kids the financial benefit of doing that, especially with the rising cost of college education, when you can go in with a semester paid for, or to make your transition to college from high school more easy, more smooth transition.
Perfect.
Any more questions?
Doesn't sound like it. Rachel.
I've got nothing to add.
Okay, great. And then Joseph, and before Joseph goes, I'm going to take one of his items, which is the diploma.
That's
that
right.
Still needs to be signed, that Polly has been nagging you about. So there's a kid who's waiting for his diploma to be signed, and he keeps calling the school asking for his diploma, and it's not signed. So if you could get in there and do that, that would, and it's your last one, right?
You
The
just
last
brought it to
one
the
you'll
meeting.
ever have.
Should have
What's
just
that?
brought it to the meeting so we could sign it.
Alec.
I'm not coming to your house. So yes, that's the plug. Joseph, what do you have anything else to add?
No, Polly, you stole my thunder. I was going to put out the same petition to get those, get the diploma signed.
Yeah. Okay,
Everything else is
and
informational and nothing.
okay, great, thanks. And then Nate.
I just had a question. Lynn, did you get the email from one of my teachers? Is that for this?
I did, but I didn't put it on for this time.
So that can wait and won't be any, that won't affect or anything?
No, no issue.
Okay, and that's all. Yeah, everything else. I do have some Governor's Emergency Education Relief Act money that I'm looking forward to spending. So I will keep you posted on how that goes.
Want to give them a little context to that in terms of how much you have to figure out how to spend?
Well, Beth just found out, and she's already got ideas. So, the governor, being a tech center kid himself back in the day, has a soft spot for tech centers. So he gave $4.5 million of federal funds to the tech centers around the state. I have $184,000 I need to spend with kind of pandemic related things. So technology, infrastructure, things like that. So we're really going to see if that can boost our, I'm hoping we're allowed to use it to spend on creating more outdoor space, i.e. sugar house, greenhouse, things around the outside where we could have school if school got shut down on the inside. But I don't know if that's going to be allowable. So other than that, the kids are going to have their individual tool sets and all individual welding helmets and stuff like that. That's kind of what's being spent around the state. So but if you do have any ideas, I can't let you in the building, but feel free to stop by. We can talk outside.
I heard that on the VSBA financial meeting the other day, and that was pretty slick that tech centers got that much money. That's great.
It was nice. And we also got the Efficiency Vermont, one of those grants. So we also will be replacing our HVAC. That was $66,000 too, and hopefully we can get that replaced by, I think we have to have it in by the end of December. So we're going to be working quickly there.
I was going to say, I heard December 30th was like the cutoff, but then they said because of the work being like so many people, that if the work got completed after, as long as it's slated to happen before the 30th, that was allowed, I heard.
Yeah, I think we might just have to have the equipment in our building, I think, is one of the key things. And then other than that, I just want to, I thought Sarah Jo did a great job with our employability website. So I'm glad you guys took the time to let us spotlight that. Thank you.
That was great. And then Gab, I know you're normally on the SU, but you're here. Is there anything that you needed to add about the virtual academy?
Nope, I'm just here to keep myself informed.
Okay, great. All right, and so let me see. What else is on the agenda? Oh, so now we just have board business. Oh, okay. Oh, central office, that was supposed to be on the last meeting. I don't think that's for this meeting.
No, I think it is, because at the last meeting, this board asked Morgan and I to go look at People's Plaza.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, I forgot. Right. Okay.
So we did do that.
And?
So I think we looked at the space, and it's definitely a promising space in terms of the availability of what's there. It is way more than we currently have, and there's definitely, you know, if we had that much available to us, we're kind of like Beth and money. Space for us, we can already like anticipate how we would kind of spend a space in terms of developing programming. I think the crux of what the staff has communicated, we've done some surveys around what are the needs, and I think we shared some of those with you at the SU board level about what are the physical space needs, and they've also given some feedback about, you know, what are the criteria that we're really looking for, and they keep coming back to the centrality piece and the amount of time on the road, and the amount of time, you know, in terms of commuting and attracting people to come work organizationally. It's a little far in Richford, especially if you're coming from Sheldon and we're pulling people in for us. So that is one. It's not saying that it's not a good option. I think it's a viable option. It doesn't meet that checkbox. It does, I will say, meet a lot of the other checkboxes. Morgan, do you want to add anything?
I think that's good. It would be a pretty easy space to build out. It would have enough room not only for any future growth for us, but for things like the program that Michelle is talking about, trying to get up and running. So it's got certainly got a lot of potential there.
Could it potentially generate revenue initially before all the space was allocated for central office staff?
In terms of renting out some of the additional spaces, Kevin?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we'd have to work through that piece. It depends on what kind of programs the SU board would consider allowing us to develop, because it falls into that category of, if that space is available, there's certainly a need for some of the programs that we're trying to develop. But we've never had that kind of space either. So I guess it would, you guys would technically be the landlord in that circumstance. So you'd have to tell us what space was available.
Yeah, I think ultimately we would want it all to be used for the central office and the SU, but if there was the option that you weren't using 2,000 square feet, whatever, just throw a number out there that we could offset and generate a little bit of revenue would be a good situation to be in as well, I think.
So it's a little bit of a strange phenomenon, because this district board asked us to go look at a space, but it's really the SU board that kind of gives us our charge. So I think that in this circumstance, it would be I think that the ER board would have to have a conversation with the SU board, which 3 of you are half of the SU board, if that was something that you wanted to pursue as a potential option to bring to your voters. I think that, Kevin, the one thing that we talked about after was, I know you had expressed some worry about, the loss of the people in Richford, and I think I hear the worry about the loss of, because we do pay rent where we are, and that we're renting from the town. The one wonder is about kind of that's also an impact if we use that for school related and you purchased it, the town would also lose that tax on that property as well. So just want to make sure that you're thinking that way as well.
No, I understand that. And I agree. I mean, it is the tax benefit versus the revenue loss. The other part to me, and it's more of the, I'm trying to word this properly, the naysayers, let's say, like if we remove, and again, this is an SU discussion more than this board, but if we remove this building from Richford, or this office from Richford, move it somewhere else, where is that going to lead in the future? The people who are thinking that Act 46 is going to be the closing of buildings. So if we're going to close this office space in Richford, move it to Enosburg, let's say, are they then going to think that we're going to be looking at, in the next 3 to 5 years, closing other buildings in Richford? That's my fear.
I think we're not really talking about closing a building. We're talking about needing more space and more parking, and because we've centralized, just having a greater need than what they can meet for us in that space right now. So I mean, I guess I understand what you're saying. I would hope we could help with that context, or in that conversation, that's nothing's closing, it's just growing.
Can I add something here? So Andy Derby contacted me after the last board meeting and asked me, he had heard that this was discussed at the last Richford-Enosburg board meeting, and he asked for some clarification, which I attempted to provide, but encouraged him to contact Morgan, which I'm not sure if he did or not. He did, Morgan.
Yep.
So do you want to say anything about that, Morgan, or?
I would just say the select board, or Andy on the select board, is very interested in trying to keep central office in the post office building. And so had, made some suggestions and proposals about changes that they would consider to that space. And that's something that I told them that I would bring that to the SU board, and that, if it was relevant for him to come to an SU board meeting in the future, we could do that. I don't necessarily see that, but I told him that I would report back to that board and then let him know how that went. And obviously everybody can watch these meetings on YouTube now as well, so.
Is there more space to be had in that building?
Well, there's the fallout shelter in the basement, I think he's referring to.
Yeah. So I don't know how much space could actually be converted into something usable. We have one room down there that in theory is for storage, although we don't store anything that we want kept permanently down there. But it does have a full basement under the whole footprint that you see above ground.
So I think kind of the next steps for the SU board would be to look at like what are all the viable options, and then give us a direction about how do we proceed from here.
And so when you're but we're not doing that now, right? You're going to bring that to the SU board first, or do you want direction now?
Well, I don't think this board can give us direction. This is an SU board.
Yeah.
Like you guys could propose something if you thought that you wanted to purchase that building. It would have to be purchased by the ERUUSD board communities. So your taxpayers would have to vote on property purchase. So you would be proposing that to the SU board if that's something that you wanted to put on the table.
When you went and looked at that building, did they suggest a purchase price?
So I did not talk about a purchase price. I don't know if you did, Morgan.
I did not talk to them about a purchase price. We've seen it listed. I think Kevin, you saw the lowest at $625 somewhere online.
Yeah,
625,000.
625 is what I saw it listed at. Keyword listed.
Right.
So I'm not sure, Polly, what you're thinking from here.
No, I'm not really. So I guess yeah, I'm not sure either. Those are,
Well,
we
can't really make a decision on what to do with the building until we'll bring it up at the SU level. We can't really do anything about it at this point in time until the SU kind of gives direction about which way they want to head towards.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you would need to know is, as a board, are you collectively behind exploring that option and going to the taxpayers? Because that's what you would essentially be talking about the SU level. I mean, maybe you're right, Rick, that conversation at the SU level comes first. Not sure. It's like,
yeah. So I mean, I think that from my perspective anyway, it certainly is open to a possibility, especially if it checks a lot of boxes, because I think that no matter, I'm not sure, again, I don't know for sure what's going on everywhere, but it seems that every location might not be able to check all the boxes. So I certainly think that it would be on the table, or at least from my perspective anyway, it would be.
Yeah, I think we would agree.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely something to pursue. I personally would think it would make sense to continue pursuing also looking at some central options, because if you look at the SU and how far people are going to be spread, and the people who are in central office that we want to be actively engaged in our buildings, that if they're all the way on one end, that's a lot of travel time, which means a lot of missed face time. And that's just concerning to me on some level, as well as just that recruiting piece of getting someone of those level positions and them wanting to be something are a little more central. Not to shoot it down completely. I think it's still, if the space is meaningful, we need to pursue it, but I'm not all in on that.
Okay, so there's another, unless there's any other questions around that or comments. There was about the scholarship, but it says on no, did I look at the wrong one? Sorry, I was looking at the wrong agenda. Set future agenda items. Anybody, I noticed on the January agenda, we have the scholarship conversation. Is there any other agenda items you'd like to see on the next meeting?
Yeah, so I got actually 3 things. I'd like to set a date as soon as we can for our board retreat, if we're going to have multiple nights or what we're doing. The sooner I can get those on a calendar, the better off that's going to be for me. So that was one thing. The other thing is financial literacy. So that was brought up as part of the portrait for a grad. And I think it had certainly a lot of students seem to be pretty interested in it, as well as community members and interest holders. And I know that, or we did at one point in time, I think Richford has a half-credit course that's required for graduation, maybe in financial literacy. Enosburg does not. So I didn't know if we wanted to take a look at aligning those 2 high schools together and just taking a look at what we offer for financial literacy and when we offer it, and if we want it really as a structured course, or we wanted to embed it in different courses as part of a kind of a core thing, or if we didn't want to do anything with it. So that was one thing. And the other thing is, I had on my agenda is I thought we might have a discussion on remote learning after COVID. And I got just three things I've been thinking of on this. One is, and I don't know if it's my imagination or not, but there seems to be a subset of students that actually do better remote learning. And I don't know if you guys identified some of those students or not, and what we want to do with those students going forward. The second thing is, so this was brought up, well, it's been brought up a couple times, but it was brought up the last time with regards to the Cold Hollow Career Center, and how sometimes some students have to make a choice between attending the Cold Hollow Career Center or doing some other classes, because they can't attend those other classes the same time they're supposed to be in the Cold Hollow Career Center. So I think the last time it was I was talking about it was with Nate and the nursing program, and he was telling me how they're torn between, taking some of the advanced science classes or going to the Cold Hollow Career Center. And the third way is, particularly in some of the upper level classes, the student enrollment is getting kind of low in a few of those I saw. And I didn't know if there's a way we can combine some of those classes between the 2 high schools. And that's all I had.
Yeah, okay. Reshaping education. All I had.
Polly, I think that I would want some time with administrators to have some conversation before this is on a board agenda. These are conversations that require some in-depth analysis from the instructional leaders in those buildings. So I would like to come back to it, Rick. but I would also like to have time to be able to unpack some of this. Some of this is already on our radar, but we're certainly not ready to give what you're asking for yet.
Yep. No, it says future. It doesn't say when in the future.
Okay, just want to make sure you weren't thinking tomorrow. That's like tomorrow.
I have a clarifying question though. So Rick, students have access to VT/VLC for remote learning if that is the style that they like. Were you thinking about grades other than high school, or what were you thinking?
So actually, I was thinking of some grades other than so as far as some of the students doing better outside of using the virtual learning model that's there now. Yeah, I was actually thinking of some grades other than high school.
Okay.
And again, it's not. I mean, it's not a lot of students, but I've come across certainly several in my travels that seem to be doing quite a lot better under the hybrid or remote learning models.
I don't know if any of the principals want to add anything to that. Or we'll take a look at it and get back to you, Rick.
I don't disagree with you, Rick, but I think sometimes I think there are some kids who do well with remote learning, but what do they lose with the interaction with people? And I think school is a microcosm of society, and you're learning more than just academic skills there. You're learning how to function in society and navigate through difficult times and struggles, and you grow from that. And so while there are some kids who might be doing well academically, are they doing well growing in those other areas?
So actually, the ones that actually I think they're growing very well in a lot of ways. And mentally is certainly one of them.
Yeah,
as well as academically, so they're doing much. They seem like much happier people, I guess, is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I'd say my son is probably one of those, and he's enjoying the remote. He would like to do. He thinks he could probably get a whole nother year's worth of stuff done. He's meant so. I think if I look at it as enrichment and not maybe taking the place of that, I think if we could look at things of doing it in person and an addition to for some kids, I think there could be a lot of benefit there.
Yep, exactly.
I would just add on, I think there are some students doing really well remotely, but I also worry that some of those kids would choose to really isolate themselves if given the option. And I just worry about the long-term effects, especially at the middle level of that kind of well, I'm happier not connecting with people or not making friends. And I've seen down the road that can be pretty negative in the long run. And I think it's better, it's not every kid. Some kids, it's just a great model. But I think for a lot of kids, it's a way for someone who's shy or insecure or needs to develop some of those skills in a school setting to kind of isolate themselves and not develop those things. And so I do worry about that long term.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. We come to really get clear that one size doesn't fit all. But I think the social emotional piece is huge, and the wonderful work that was done on Portrait of a Graduate. I think we're not going to let that go. We really like that, and I think I would like to know that there is built into programming for students who choose to go remote only, those components that would help support their social, emotional, and overall well-being that supports the stuff that was identified in Portrait for Graduate work.
I think it's a great question, Rick, and I welcome the opportunity to bring this back because I do think we have the potential beyond COVID to think about education differently. And I think it's really important for us to think about what we've learned during this time and not lose sight of that in terms of the opportunities ahead of us. Because I think it would be a travesty for us to just say, okay, when, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later, but when we get to a post-COVID world, it would be really sad if we went back to just doing education the way we have done education in the past. There's just too many good lessons in this time for us to walk away with.
Okay, anything else before we wrap it up? Okay, going once, going twice, sold. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Perfect. I'm gonna call the roll, and I have Amy.
Aye.
Rick.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Mort.
Aye.
Don't forget to go sign that diploma, people.